Begin the sugar skull project by holding your paper vertically, which is taller than wide, and folding in half from right to left. Make sure that your crease stays on the right side of your workspace. We're going to fold the top edge to the bottom edge. The crease is on the right and the top now. About an inch from the top right corner, we're going to make a little notch. And an inch from the top left corner, we're going to make a notch. We'll draw a long, wide U shape, which will be the bottom of our eye socket. With a pair of scissors, keeping the paper folded together, carefully cut out on the line. We're going to discard the paper we've just cut out and unfold our rectangle so that it is tall and skinny. This is now an eye socket shape. To draw the cranium, make a mark almost at the very top edge of your paper on the crease, which is on your right, and make another mark below the eye socket, not quite halfway to the bottom. You're going to make a gentle curve from one point to the other. Make sure that when you pass the eye socket that you're closer to the edge of the paper than the edge of the eye socket. You don't want fragile eye sockets. We're going to draw the jaw shape by creating a capital L, and it goes almost to the bottom of the paper. We can adjust the shape of our jaw. We will not see these lines there on the back of the paper. You can erase the curve that is inside of the jaw. We're going to draw half of an upside down heart near the eye socket. This is our nasal cavity. We're going to carefully cut out a nasal cavity. Make sure you rotate your paper to help cut along the curve. And then we're going to cut out the skull shape, making sure that we discard all of our scrap papers and put them in the recycling bin. If you don't follow the curve of your skull exactly as you've drawn it, that's okay. Do the best you can. Up the paper, you have your skull shape. You're going to write your first and last name and your homeroom teacher's name on the back of the paper in pencil so that we can keep track of it while it's in progress. Flip your paper over to the side that does not have your name or any sketchy pencil marks. And we're going to start by drawing the teeth. Your design is going to be the same on the left and the right, so symmetrical. We're only going to draw on one half of the skull at a time. I'm going to start drawing on my left. To create very simple teeth, I'm going to create a rectangle with rounded corners. And I'm going to draw the teeth like they are Lego bricks or like bricks you would see in your fireplace. Very simple and very stylized. So I'm going to draw my upper teeth lines and then my lower teeth lines. They are staggered like Lego bricks. Around the eye sockets on most traditional sugar skull designs are flower petal-like designs. You don't have to draw flower petals, but you should try to create some kind of repeating pattern that will go around the eye sockets. Keep your spaces kind of large. Think about what kind of art material you plan on using to color your sugar skull. Sugar skulls frequently have a large central design in the middle of the forehead. Usually it's a symbol like a flower or a heart or a sun. I'm going to draw half of a heart. I'm going to create some plant-like designs around my heart. I'm drawing right through some of my sketches because I know I can go back in and tidy up my designs afterwards, especially because I'm drawing with a pencil and I'm drawing light enough that I can just erase any mistakes or any overdrawn lines. Most of the focus on the sugar skull will be on the upper part of the skull, so the eye sockets and the forehead. You want to create a fairly complex design while at the same time not creating something that you feel you wouldn't be able to successfully add color to using your chosen art material. So make choices about how you're going to use your space based on what you know about your own artistic preferences, as well as what you observed in the PowerPoint presentation about what traditional sugar skulls tend to look like. So I can create some swirling vine-like designs. I can add in some dots and some stars. So I'm kind of blending in my own personal idea of what will look good on this project with what I observed from sugar skulls based on the presentation. I also want to create designs around the cheekbone or the space between the eye socket and the teeth. Your sugar skull shape is different than everybody else's sugar skull shape based on how you cut it out. So you might have more space here or you might have less space. Think about what you can use for a design in this area that fits well with the rest of your design while also exploring your own ideas about what will look good for this project and your observations of traditional skulls. So I'm repeating vines and leaves. I'm also going to put flower petals around the teeth. I'm using my space, but I'm not creating a design that's super cluttered. I know that I can fill in small areas very neatly with paint because that's what I plan on using. Think about what media or art material you plan on using to add color to your skull, and make sure that you feel comfortable filling in the size of the shapes that you're creating with your chosen medium. Once you've finished drawing half of your skull's design, you're going to choose from the available methods the best technique for transferring your design onto the other half of the skull. My design has a lot of tiny details, so using an oil pastel is not something I would choose to do because that would obscure or ruin a lot of my fine details. So I'm just going to push down with firm pressure using a regular pencil and go over my lines again to make them nice and dark. You're welcome to use the oil pastel transfer method from the butterfly, but if you have fine details, I would consider using just your pencil and using much more pressure to make your lines very dark. Just like with the oil pastel transfer method, you want to try to get the graphite, which is the material in your pencil, to transfer across to the other side. So you can use the glue bottle method, you can use the edge of your scissors, you can use another pencil, you can use a bone scoring tool that we have in the art room. There are multiple tools that you can use to add pressure to the back side of your paper to get those graphite lines to transfer across neatly. I'm choosing to use a black Sharpie to go over all of my final design lines so that it really pops out. Because I plan on using the tempera paint, the Sharpie is waterproof when it dries, so this is an excellent choice. You do not have to go over your lines with black marker, but you may choose to. If you plan on painting, do not combine paint with the Crayola markers in your toolboxes. They are not waterproof. To add color to my sugar skull, I'm primarily using the fluorescent tempera paints. You may use both the fluorescent and the regular tempera paints. I'm just going to ask that you please do not mix them together and definitely try not to cross-contaminate the paints. Both your design and your application of color should be symmetrical, so whatever you do to one side of your design, you should also repeat to the other side. Do the best you can to keep them the same. While you're adding color, think about your observations of color schemes or color groupings used in traditional sugar skull and Day of the Dead kinds of decorations. They do stick with a particular color scheme. When you've finished adding color, we're going to glue the sugar skull to a black sheet of construction paper. If you use paint, you have to make sure that your paint is completely dry before you glue it to the paper. We're going to use white glue, so make sure that you don't use too much white glue, especially if you're using paint or markers, because you do not want your colors to bleed when you apply the white glue to the back of the skull. You only need to open up the glue cap a little bit so a little bead of glue can escape. We do not want globs of glue on this design. So we're going to open up the glue cap just a little bit and start by testing it to see how much glue is coming out. So we've got some little dots. We're pretty good. So I'm going to run a very thin bead of glue around the perimeter or edge of my skull. I'm not drizzling it all over the place like it's a toaster strudel. I'm really kind of tracing those edges around the eye sockets and around the nasal cavity, as well as the edges of the jaw and the cranium. I'm going to carefully flip the skull over, making sure I don't get glue on my hands. I'm going to eyeball the placement. I want to try to get it centered. Definitely don't have any of your skull hanging off the edge of the paper. Gently press down and smooth it out. If you're using oil pastels in any way on this project, we know that they smear, so please be very gentle when pushing down your skull, and don't rub it because you don't want to smudge the oil pastel. Push down all of the edges so that it stays firmly connected to the paper while you add the final touches to your artwork. The last thing you need to do is create designs inside of the eye sockets and nasal cavities. You must use either oil pastels or colored pencils or crayons to add designs inside of these cavities. You may choose to use the fluorescent oil pastels to add final details to the skull as well. The fluorescent paints and oil pastels are so appealing because they are blacklight reactive. Don't forget to put your name and your homeroom teacher's name in the bottom right corner of your skull using white colored pencil.